Alright, so here I am. I'm Artan Seshmani from Imaginarium of Technology at MIT. I'm here with Artan Seshmani. So we're going to do some brainstorming and get a little bit messy with Blackboard and see where we can land. Okay, so would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Artan, and I'm an algebraic geometer. I'm an associate professor at the Harvard as well as Center for Math Sciences and Applications. I was actually looking forward to this opportunity. So
thank you so much. It's an honor to
have
you on board.
So Barmak told me that there are some interesting things where we can use geometry to talk about locomotion.
Yeah, so locomotion and geometry. So we're going to talk about locomotion and geometry and see how we can use it. So our new exhibition, which is coming to MIT at 16th of October, is about flying cars, and it's 6 issues with flying cars and how to fix them.
Okay.
And so basically what we say in this exhibition is basically flying car is kind of a myth, and you end up having different modalities of mostly like electrical vertical takeoff and landing planes. And so one of the designs that we're thinking about in this exhibition is mostly trying to think about more practical, transformable or expandable and contractible kind of structures that require certain geometries. So one of the structures that I would actually want to get on board and talk about is very, very simple structure which has probably been around for centuries. Let's start talking about that, and then we will maybe dig into it a little bit more and see what we can do. Sure. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the scissor structure. So basically what we have is something that, let's see if they can see, so something that looks basically like a scissor. And so when you expand this, when you reduce this angle here, you're going to get something like this. And when you contract it, when you reduce this angle here, you're going to have it expanded. So one of the designs that we have is basically an automized paraglider that uses this structure to expand the parachute and contract it. I was thinking of, because if you want to exert that force all at this point, you're going to have basically a lot of stress on this hinge. One of the methods that I was thinking to help this was to actually try to use a certain type of like string and spring kind of mechanism. So where you have some elastic bands that are basically vertical here, right? So these elastic bands, they basically want to reduce this angle, so they want to expand this, right? And these guys, and you have basically a string here that goes here, and then goes here, goes here, goes here, in such kind of manner. And so when I pull this, I can actually, because this is tight here, I can actually kind of extract it to this structure, make it kind of contract it. And if I loosen that string, then this will basically expand again. Right. So I was, this is one of the kind of structures that I was thinking about, but I would really love to know, what do you think of this structure? And one of the issues with this is that we don't want to have too many of these elastic bands or springs here. That's kind of the drawbacks of this.
Well, I mean, for example, I think one thing, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, this needs some type of analysis, of course. However, I'm guessing, like over here, when you're putting some forces on this one, the first time that you feel the resistance to these two forces is the amount of force that you can calculate this joint actually is going to experience. So what I'm saying is, you see these two bars in here, you can put similar bars and connect them like this.
For sure. So these bars are expandable. They're like
so these bars are expandable, of course, because then otherwise, because they have longer length, it doesn't make sense to put them rigid bars in here, because then you cannot contract them. Sure. So these bars are like things that might look like telescopic kind of structures.
Yeah.
So if you put it over here,
this is hinged here.
Right. So exactly. So if you put it over here, then now you have these two forces as well. that will withstand the sum of these two things, and you can do a calculation, and you can see that these 10, the uniaxial components of these two forces that these two joints actually experience help over here, and probably that makes it more efficient in the sense that you will feel less force on your hands actually to expand it or to contract it. So I think that it is very similar to copying the scissor, changing the angle to give a phase lag, and then superpose it with itself. However, I'm not just copying the whole scissor, because that makes it double the weight and so on. I'm just saying take a small piece of it and just 2 bars and make them expandable so that they can have the length and so on, and then put it in this way. And my claim is that you can do calculations and just see that for a given weight, for example, over there, you can do this easier.
And so another thing that is the telescopic structure itself, right? For example, a structure that looks like this. So when you push that up there because there's not enough space.
The heel is to start rotating, and another thing you can do is to actually increase the torque resistance, so to speak, of the bars that you are using in your mechanism. Why don't you give them curvature? So that obviously helps the bar to gain some sort of resistance. So you expect to...
Okay, so you're saying maybe I have something that looks like this.
Exactly. Now I'm saying if you put some force in here, this kind of mechanism, with respect to this transversal force, these 2 bars, with the curvature that you've added to them, can withstand more force than if they were like that. I don't really remember, but I remember many years ago I read somewhere in some article that some guy came up with an idea of a gearbox. Instead of using many gears to transfer whatever motion to each other, he used this conic section, this quasi-cone, to basically use it as a gearbox. So he had a rubber band attached to it, and the rubber band was attached, and this was being attached to the engine.
Okay.
All right. And so he had some mechanism, like a pen, if you want, that could actually move the location of the rubber band on this thing. So if you're here and your other gear is connected to here, that obviously is telling you that your engine is producing a lot more displacement, because your engine rotates this part of the cone and you get a lot more displacement.
So this is shifting
continuously. So it was a continuous gearbox. That in very high speed, the rubber band was here, and in very low speed, when you were going up the hill, the rubber band was here. So here you have the highest amount of displacement and the little force. And so the gear was, there was another gear there. And so this thing could switch between these two continuously. So he had actually, I don't remember really. I mean, so he had this thing designed. I was fascinated by it. It's like, what a cool idea.
So maybe let's ask you some quick questions here in front of the camera. So if in the future we get the flying cars to work, well, not flying cars, but electrical vertical takeoff and landing, would you take a ride?
Well, after you guys basically make an announcement that now you have passed the alpha phase. Okay, so beta phase, definitely I won't ride it. But the alpha phase, yes, sure. I mean, look, there are these Uber cars who are driverless and so on. I heard that the driverless cars these days, I think Uber is already experimenting with them, and actually a friend of mine was a faculty at Pittsburgh University. She took it, she actually I wasn't one of those cars that she was saying that there was a driver sitting at the behind the steering because they're not still sure what's gonna happen.
Exactly.
It's very much like similar to anything else. I think eventually this technology will be absorbed by regular humans like me. So I'm sure soon, if you come up with these vertical flyers, I would. Who doesn't like such a thing? Right?
Okay,
it's
sure.
much easier. Sure, yeah.